Some stories don't end with death, they end with silence. A basement, but before the gunshots. And history never forgot what happened next.
Imagine knowing this is the last night of your life. When the doors closed, what was the Romanov family really thinking? Did they know their fate, or did they remain hopeful until the very end?
Not every empire collapses with explosions, but because the world hadn't realized yet that something enormous had already ended. One of those nights happened in Russia in the summer of 1918. A family sat together in a guarded house, believing tomorrow still existed. Outside, the air was cold. Inside, no one knew that history had already chosen its ending. No trial, no final speech, no farewell to the empire. Only a locked door and people waiting in silence. You have to go back before the gunshots. Back before the revolution. Back to when the most powerful family in Russia still believed they would rule forever. For more than 300 years, the Romanov dynasty stood above Russia. A land so large people said the sun never truly disappeared across it. Millions lived under one crown, and at the top of that world sat one man. His name was Nicholas II. He didn't look like a conqueror. He wasn't loud, he wasn't dramatic. People who met him often described him as polite, calm, even gentle. But history doesn't always judge rulers by personality. That his authority came directly from God. Not parliament, not elections, not public opinion. To question the Tsar meant questioning the order of the universe itself. And for years, huge family, huge halls, crystal chandeliers, guards standing motionless, formal dinners and endless traditions.
But behind palace walls, another reality existed. Nicholas and his wife, Alexandra, weren't cold rulers. They were unusually close as a family.
They spent evenings together reading, writing letters, playing games. Photographs show smiles that almost feel ordinary. They had 5 children, 4 daughters, Olga, Tatiana, Maria, a son, Alexei Nikolaevich, the boy who carried the future of an empire. But almost immediately, something was wrong. At first, they noticed strange bruises, then bleeding that wouldn't stop. Then fear. Doctors eventually understood. Alexei had hemophilia. Today, we understand the disease far better. But in the early 20th century, for a royal family, this felt almost like a curse. A simple fall could become dangerous. A small internal injury could become fatal. Every fever became terrifying. Every childhood accident became an emergency. The palace became quieter. The illness was kept monarchies survive partly on appearance. Strength, stability, certainty become political disaster. So they hid it. But secrets create openings, and eventually, someone walked into that opening. His name was Grigory Rasputin.
Even today, Rasputin feels more like a character from fiction than history. Tall, intense eyes, messy beard, rough manners. Some saw a holy man.
Others saw a manipulator. Stories spread around him like smoke. People said he healed, people said he hypnotized, people said he corrupted everyone around him. No one agreed who he really was. But one thing became undeniable. The royal family trusted him, especially Alexandra. Whenever Alexei became dangerously ill, Rasputin appeared. Sometimes he prayed, sometimes he simply sat nearby. And strangely, on several occasions, the boy improved.
Was it coincidence? Medical misunderstanding? Psychological calm? No one knows for certain.
But inside the palace, explanations stopped mattering. Hope took over, and hope can become dependence. Soon Rasputin wasn't just visiting, he had influence.
People whispered that ministers listened to him, that appointments changed because of him, that decisions passed through him. Whether true or exaggerated didn't matter anymore. The damage had already begun. Outside palace walls, Russia was changing. Factories expanded, cities grew, workers demanded more, food became unstable.
Political anger spread, and then came war. World War I. What began as patriotism slowly turned into exhaustion. Russian soldiers died in enormous numbers. Families lost sons. Supplies disappeared. People stood in lines for bread. And while suffering increased, many believed the palace remained disconnected. Nicholas made one of the biggest decisions of his reign. He took direct control of Dangerous, because every military failure now became personal. Every defeat had a face. Meanwhile, Alexandra remained near government affairs. And because Rasputin stayed close to her, rumors exploded. Stories turned into accusations. Accusations turned into hatred. The empire began cracking, not suddenly, slowly, like ice before it breaks. Then came 1917. Crowds filled the streets. Workers protested. Soldiers hesitated. Authority weakened. For centuries, the Romanovs had ruled Russia. Now something impossible started happening. People stopped being afraid. And once that happens, everything changes. Nicholas tried to hold control. Orders were sent. Messages moved. But power was disappearing faster than anyone realized. Then the moment arrived. The Tsar signed the document. He gave up the throne. No ceremony, no crown placed aside, just paper. And 300 years of Romanov rule ended. Not with thunder, with signatures. The former emperor returned to his family. No palace, no empire, only uncertainty. At first, execution wasn't the plan. They became prisoners, guarded, moved, watched, waiting. No one knew what would happen next, not even them. And somewhere ahead, in a city they had never imagined becoming their final destination. A house was waiting, a house with a basement, and history was already moving toward its door. The train moved slowly through the endless Russian landscape. No royal flags, no ceremony, no crowds waiting at stations. Inside one of the train cars sat the family that had ruled Russia for more than 3 centuries. No one spoke much. Outside the window, forests passed like shadows. Inside, former Emperor Nicholas the Kent sat quietly with a notebook in his hands. He still kept routines, still wrote observations, still tried to behave like a father instead of a fallen ruler. Alexandra Fyodorovna adjusted her posture and looked toward the children. No crown, no court, only uncertainty. Nobody told them exactly what would happen next. That was the hardest part. Not fear, waiting. At first, they had been moved under the explanation of protection. Officially, the country was unstable. Officially, staying in one place was dangerous. Officially, they were not prisoners. But doors that stay locked eventually stop feeling temporary. The family had already spent months under restrictions. Letters were monitored. Windows were limited. Movement was controlled. Now they were being moved again. Farther, farther from the world they knew. Eventually, the train reached a city. Industrial, gray. Yekaterinburg. The air felt different, less royal. They were transported to a large two-story house. Nothing about it looked historic. No dramatic gates. Just an ordinary building. Ordinary enough that nobody would expect history to end there. Locals would later call it the House of Special Purpose. When they entered, guards gave instructions immediately. No unnecessary conversation. No looking outside. No opening windows. No wandering. The family was assigned rooms, simple, crowded, controlled. One guard later described the atmosphere as strange because despite everything, the Romanovs still acted like a family, not like prisoners. Morning routines continued. Breakfast, reading, small conversations. The daughters sewed. They wrote journals. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they complained about boredom. One day, one of the girls reportedly asked, "Do you think we'll leave here soon?" Nobody answered, because nobody knew. Their daughters tried to maintain dignity. Olga became quieter. Tatiana stayed composed, still joked sometimes, the younger G in the room. But even she was changing. Captivity stretches time. Days become soft and repetitive. You stop measuring weeks. You measure doors opening. You measure footsteps. You measure silence. Then there was Alexei. Alexei Nikolaevich, the boy who had once been heir to an empire. His health remained fragile. Walking could exhaust him. Sometimes he had to be carried. Nicholas often stayed close, not like an emperor, like a father trying to pretend everything would eventually become normal. One evening, Nicholas sat near a window. Outside, guards changed shifts. The room was quiet. Alexandra asked softly, "Do you think they'll send us abroad?" Nicholas looked away before answering. He paused longer than normal, then said, not angry, not dramatic, just honest, maybe for the first time. Weeks passed. Civil war, political chaos, power struggles, and one question became increasingly dangerous. What should happen to the former Tsar? Keeping him alive created risks. Supporters still existed, inside the house. Guards became colder. Conversations stopped. Rules changed. Small privileges disappeared. One day, some personal belongings were searched more aggressively than before. Nobody explained why. Another day, windows were painted over. Less light entered. The daughters noticed. But nobody said much, because everyone already understood something. When people stop explaining things to you, it usually means decisions have already been made. One night, the family ate dinner together. Simple food, no servants, no ceremony, just plates and conversation. Someone smiled, someone answered. For a few moments, the room looked ordinary. Thousands of family dinners. That's the uncomfortable part of history. People often imagine victims living dramatically right before tragedy. Usually, they're just being human. Later that evening, Nicholas wrote in his notes, just ordinary details, weather, meals, time. The kind of writing people do when they still assume tomorrow exists. Outside, guards stood in low voices, quietly. Orders had started arriving. No announcements, no public declarations, only discussions behind closed doors. A decision was approaching, and the family upstairs had no idea. That night, before sleeping, Alexandra reportedly crossed herself. One of the daughters closed a journal. Someone adjusted blankets. Someone wished good night. The house became quiet. A completely ordinary night. And downstairs, the chairs brought for Alexandra and Alexei, and the moment history stopped breathing. The last night, the end of the Romanovs. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The kind that feels arranged. The kind where people speak softly because something has already been decided. Inside the house in Yekaterinburg, everyone had gone to sleep. The kind where people speak softly because something has already been decided. Inside the house in Yekaterinburg, everyone had gone to sleep. Or at least, for 78 days the family had lived inside this building under guard. Windows painted over, routine controlled, days repeating themselves until time lost meaning. Then sometime after midnight, footsteps, a knock, a door opening, a voice. Wake up, get dressed. The explanation sounded simple. There was fighting nearby. The city wasn't safe. They would be moved. After months of uncertainty, this almost sounded like good news. People moved quietly. No panic. No screaming. Just sleepy confusion. Someone folded clothes. Someone collected small belongings. Someone helped the boy. Nikolaevich was weak. His father lifted him. Not like a Tsar carrying the future of Russia, just a father carrying his son. Nicholas II walked ahead. Behind him came Alexandra Fyodorovna. Then the daughters, Olga, Tatiana, Maria, Anastasia. Still together, still dressed neatly, still acting like a family. They walked downstairs. One floor, another hallway, then another door. The room waiting for them wasn't large. Low ceiling. Nothing about it looked important. Nothing about it looked like the place where an empire would end. Nicholas looked around. Alexandra looked tired. A chair was brought. Another one for Alexei. The others stood behind. Nobody argued. Nobody resisted. Because people expecting to leave don't act like people expecting to die. Then they waited. Seconds. Maybe a minute. Maybe longer. Long enough to notice nothing was happening. Long enough for the silence to become uncomfortable. Then, the door opened again. Several armed men entered. One of them stepped forward, Yurovsky. He held a paper. He spoke. It had been made to save the Romanovs, that those attempts had failed, and that a decision had been made. The family would be executed. For a moment, nobody moved. The words didn't seem real. Nicholas reportedly turned, confused, like he thought he misheard. He said something close to "what?" Not because he didn't understand the language, because he didn't understand the reality. Then everything happened at once, and history became noise. What happened next was not cinematic, not clean, not heroic. It was chaotic, fast, confused. A small room suddenly full of sound and smoke, people shouting, people falling, people trying to understand. And within minutes, 300 years of Romanov rule basement. When silence returned, the room looked ordinary again. That's the disturbing thing. History rarely leaves dramatic music behind. Just walls, dust, and people realizing something outside Russia still existed. Morning still came, people still woke up, but a chapter had closed forever.
Years passed. Rumors spread. Some believed one of the daughters survived. Stories appeared. People claimed to be lost Romanovs. Books were written. Legends were born. But eventually,
Investigations and later identification of remains closed most of those questions. And maybe that's why this story survived. Because at its center, it isn't only about politics, or monarchy, or revolution. How a family that once lived surrounded by crowns ended their story standing together in an ordinary room, still expecting tomorrow. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks for listening and being with us. Remember, every ending is the beginning of a new story. See you in the next episode.